We gave relationship advice to 47,000 strangers every week. We told them how to recognize when someone liked them, how to stop making excuses for people who kept them at arm's length, how to read between the lines, which, yes, was also the name of our show, and yes, looking back, the irony is almost too much to take seriously. Sophia and I were good at this. Genuinely good. Listeners sent emails saying we saved their marriages, their friendships, their sanity at 2 a.m. when they had nowhere else to put the things they were feeling. We won a regional podcast award in our second year. Marcus printed it out and taped it to the studio wall next to a sticky note that said, "Don't let this go to your heads." We left the sticky note up. What we could not do, apparently not even close, not even a little, was apply a single word of any of it to ourselves. I was 34 when we started the show. I am 37 now, which means I spent the back third of my 30s sitting across from the same woman every Tuesday night, close enough to hear her laugh before it fully formed, and telling myself it was just good chemistry, good radio, the kind of easy that makes a show feel alive. I was wrong. I know that now, because of a Tuesday night in October, a microphone nobody remembered to turn off, and 37 seconds of audio that were never supposed to exist. This is what happened after I pressed play. The recording light flipped red at 7:14, and I watched Sophia pull her shoulders back the way she always did right before we went live, one clean breath, a small adjustment to the mic, and then she was ready in a way that took most people years to learn, and some people never did. "Okay," she said, voice dropping into that warm, unhurried register she saved for the mic. "Today's question comes from a listener in Denver, and I'm going to read it exactly as she sent it because the phrasing matters." She glanced at her notes. She writes, "I know he's not good for me. I've known for 8 months. Why can't I just leave?" "Because knowing and feeling are two completely different nervous systems," I said. "And nobody ever explains that part." "So you don't think she's being irrational?" "I think she's being human, which is messier than irrational and a lot harder to fix with a pros and cons list." Sophia pointed at me across the table. "That, right there, that's the thing nobody wants to admit." She leaned forward into the mic. "Your brain can hold the correct answer and your chest can completely override it. Both things are true at the same time, and therapy exists partly because of this exact design flaw. Harsh on the species. Accurate on the species. There's a version of this that's not a design flaw, though," I said. "The feeling part, the override, that's also the same system that makes people drive 4 hours in a snowstorm for someone they love. It cuts both ways." She looked at me with those 3 quiet seconds she deployed like punctuation. "You are genuinely the only person I know who can make emotional dysregulation sound like a character strength. I prefer feature." "I know you do." The corner of her mouth moved. "That's the problem." Marcus's voice came through the intercom from the production booth, dry and perfectly timed. "Sophia, let him have one." "Timer's running," she said. We ran 40 minutes clean after that. The Denver listener 2 more questions from the submission box, a tangent about attachment theory that started as a 30-second aside and became the best segment of the episode. It happened like that sometimes. The tangents were usually where the real stuff lived. After Marcus called the wrap, I moved through the post-session checklist while Sophia annotated her show notes in the margins, the way she always did, small and precise, using a pen she'd stolen from a hotel in Nashville during the one live event we'd done 18 months ago. She still had it. I'd never pointed that out. "Spontaneous segment ran long," I said. "Cut at 2:22. Anything past that we were covering ground we'd already broken." I was building to something. "You were circling. There's a difference." She turned a page without looking up. "You circle when you're not sure what the point is yet." "That's an aggressive read." "It's a correct read." She capped her pen. "Episode 61, you circled for 4 minutes and 30 seconds and then landed on the single best observation you have ever made about avoidant behavior on this show." "You remember the timestamp?" "I remember it was right after I'd given up on you and started planning what I was going to say to cover." She looked up finally, and something flickered through her expression, warm, complicated, gone before I could name it. "You always get there. I just never know when." Marcus came out of the booth pulling on his jacket keys already in hand. He stopped in the doorway and looked at both of us the way he occasionally did, reading something in the room he never put into words. "Good EP," he said. "Sophia, the override segment is going to spike." "It always does," she said. "People love having a clinical term for the worst decisions of their lives." "Ethan," he pointed. Don't schedule the Riverside client before 9. You always sound like you're testifying in court when you're tired. That is not... It's accurate, Sophia said. It is accurate, Marcus agreed. Night. He glanced once more between the two of us, slow and deliberate. You guys good to lock up? We're good, I said. He nodded one corner of his mouth, pulling sideways, and left without explaining whatever that expression meant. Sophia stayed at the table, shoes off the way she always kicked them off within the first 20 minutes, cross-legged in the chair pen, moving across her notepad again. She had on a faded gray crewneck hair, half up, completely at ease, in a converted garage off South Congress Avenue that smelled like soundproofing foam and Marcus's terrible single-origin coffee. 2.5 years of Tuesday nights in this room, and she looked like she'd been here her entire life. I had my jacket in my hand, keys in the other, and a 7:45 call in the morning. I should have left. Her handwriting slowed. Her head drifted to the side, gradual and involuntary, the way it did when she'd been editing in her head all day before the session and had nothing left after. Her breathing evened out. Her pen stopped moving. Out in under 60 seconds. She did that sometimes. I set my jacket down, pulled the blanket off the couch armrest, and draped it over her shoulders without making a sound. She didn't move. I cut the overheads, left the corner lamp on low, picked up my keys, and crossed to the door. My phone buzzed on the way out. Marcus. You know what you're doing, man. I stood on the sidewalk in the October air and read it twice. Then I put my phone in my pocket and walked to my car without answering because the honest answer was no, and I wasn't ready to say that out loud yet. That was 3 weeks before the Tuesday that changed everything. I didn't know it yet. Neither did she. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday in October, we recorded the best episode we'd done all year. I know that now because Marcus told me afterward, which is a strange way to find out given that I was there for all of it. But that's what he said, best episode all year, and he said it in the specific tone he used when he meant something adjacent to what he was actually saying. The session ran long. We'd pulled in a listener question about the difference between loving someone and being used to them, and the conversation went somewhere neither of us had planned. I think people confuse consistency with love, Sophia said, leaning into the mic. Like he's always there, so it must be real. But always being there and actually choosing to be there are completely different things. How do you tell the difference? I asked. You notice how you feel when they're not around. She paused. If the absence is a relief, that's your answer. If it feels like a missing tooth, you know that thing where your tongue keeps finding the gap, that's something else entirely. A missing tooth, I repeated. It's not romantic, but it's accurate. She tilted her head. You know exactly what I mean. Yeah, I said. I do. Marcus called the wrap at 10:53. I had a client call I'd stupidly scheduled for 7 the next morning, the Riverside account. The one that required me to be caffeinated and dressed like I had my life together, and I'd been watching the clock for the last 20 minutes. I have to head out, I said, pulling on my jacket. Early call. The Riverside guy. Sophia made a face like she'd bitten something sour. My condolences. It's fine. You say that every time, and then you text Marcus at 8:15 looking like a man who has seen things. I'll be fine. You'll survive, she corrected. Different metric entirely. I laughed and grabbed my keys. Lock up when you leave. Always do. Marcus. Already gone, Marcus called from the booth. I'll pull the raw files in the morning. I said goodnight. I walked out. The door swung shut behind me with the specific soft click of the latch Marcus had fixed in September after 4 months of it sticking. What none of us did, not me, not Marcus, not Sophia, was check the board. The recording light stayed red. Sophia found out she was alone the way she always did by kicking her second shoe off and listening to the room settle. She picked up her phone, scrolled past 3 unread texts, and called her sister. Claire picked up on the second ring. How was the session? Good. Sophia's voice had changed, the mic register gone something softer underneath it. Really good, actually, which is almost annoying. Why annoying? Because good sessions mean I have to sit here afterward and feel things I've gotten very efficient at not feeling during business hours. She exhaled hard, the kind that starts in the chest and takes something with it. Claire, I'm so tired. Of the podcast. Of pretending. Her voice cracked at the edges just slightly. We spent 40 minutes tonight talking about the difference between loving someone and being used to them, and I sat there giving articulate, well-researched answers, and the entire time my heart was beating so loud I was genuinely concerned about Mike Bleed. Claire's voice dropped. Sophia, I know. How long has it been like this? 3 years. A short, humorless laugh, the kind that hurts on the way out. Give or take. I stopped counting because counting made it worse. She pulled her knees to her chest. Tonight he said, yeah, I do, like it was the most natural thing in the world, and I had to take a breath mid-sentence because my whole chest just... Claire, I don't know how to explain what happens to my chest when he talks like that. You don't have to explain it. I've watched you do this for 3 years. Then you know it's bad. I know it's been bad. Claire's voice was firm and honest. Sophia, you're 35. You have been in love with this man since you were 32. At some point, the math stops being romantic and starts being sad. What I need to know is what you're going to do about it. Nothing. The word came out flat and final. He doesn't see me like that. I'm his co-host. I'm the person he calls when a session goes sideways or a sponsor email needs rewording. Her voice broke cleanly down the middle. I'm the person he covers with a blanket when I fall asleep in the studio, Claire. He does that like it's the most normal thing in the world. Like taking care of me is just automatic. And I can't decide if that's the best or the worst part. Sophia, I don't know how much longer I can sit across from him twice a week and act like this is enough. Her voice had gone raw and stripped of every professional layer she wore during business hours. Because it was enough for a long time, it really was. But something shifted and I can't shift it back, and I don't know what to do with that. You could tell him. I could blow up the best thing in my life, yes. That's one option. Or it becomes a better thing. Or I lose it entirely and spend the rest of my career explaining to podcast directories why Between the Lines imploded. She pressed the heel of her hand against her eye, her breath uneven. I just needed to say it out loud once, that's all. Just once to someone who isn't 47,000 strangers. I hear you, Claire said quietly. I've always heard you. Sophia stayed on the phone another 10 minutes after that. Less talking, more, just breathing together the way sisters do when words have run out. By the time she finally said goodnight and set her phone on the table, the room had gone completely quiet around her. The recording light clicked off automatically at midnight. 47 minutes of audio, raw and unedited, and sitting in Marcus's queue for the morning. At 7:12 the next day, Marcus opened his laptop at the kitchen counter with his first cup of coffee, pulled up the session folder, and hit play. He got as far as I don't know how much longer I can sit across from him before he stopped the file. He put his coffee down. He stared at the waveform on the screen for a long moment, his jaw tight. Then he closed the laptop, sat back in his chair, and pressed both hands flat on the counter like he needed something solid under him. 3 minutes passed. He picked up his phone and typed, Bro, we need to talk. Don't open the Tuesday night file until you call me first. He stared at the message, added one more line. I mean it. Call me before you touch anything. Then he sent it and sat in his kitchen in the early morning light holding information that wasn't his and not having the first idea what to do with it. I saw Marcus's texts at 6:48, 27 minutes before my alarm with the clarity of someone who'd been mostly asleep and was now completely not. I read them twice. Then a third time. Don't open the Tuesday night file until you call me first. I mean it. Call me before you touch anything. Marcus was not a dramatic person. He was the guy who had once spilled an entire thermos of coffee across the mixing board, looked at the damage for exactly 4 seconds and said, Okay, let's solve this. The fact that he had sent 2 texts too when Marcus typically communicated in the fewest possible words made my stomach drop in a way I couldn't name yet. I canceled my 7 a.m. Riverside call and called Marcus at 7:03. Tell me what happened, I said. Not on the phone. His voice was careful the way it got when he was managing something he hadn't fully processed himself. Coffee. The place on Lamar, 45 minutes. Marcus. 45 minutes, Ethan. He hung up. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with his laptop open and his coffee untouched. That detail got me more than anything else. Marcus never let coffee go cold. I sat down. Tell me. He turned the laptop to face me. The screen showed an audio waveform Tuesday session, 47 minutes, 22 seconds. I opened it to edit this morning, he said. Standard Wednesday routine. The session ends at the 53-minute mark, then dead air, then... He stopped, set his jaw. Just listen. I'll cue it to 47 minutes in. What is on this file, Marcus? He looked at me directly. Something you need to hear before anyone else does." He held eye contact. "Just listen." He pressed play. The first thing I heard was ambient room noise, the studio hum, the acoustic texture of a space that doesn't know it's being recorded. Then Sophia's voice. She was talking to Claire. I knew it immediately. The difference between Sophia on mic and Sophia when she thinks she's alone was not subtle once you knew what to listen for. One was warm and constructed. The other was just her unguarded in a way she almost never allowed herself to be. My hands went completely still on the table. I heard her say she was tired. I heard her voice crack when she said the word pretending. I heard her describe sitting across from me for 40 minutes with her heart pounding so hard she'd been genuinely worried about McBleed, and something in my own chest tightened in direct response to that. Then I heard I don't know how much longer I can sit across from him and act like this is enough. Marcus reached over and paused the file. "There's more," he said quietly. "That's the middle. Another 6 minutes after that." I didn't speak. My throat had gone tight in a way that made words feel like too much effort. "Play the rest," I said finally. He did. When it ended, the coffee shop noise came rushing back, espresso machine, someone's chair scraping, a burst of laughter near the register. The regular world completely uninterrupted. Marcus closed the laptop. He looked at me. So, I said, "you want to tell me why you look like someone just handed you an answer instead of a problem?" I exhaled slowly. "Because that's what it feels like." "Ethan," his voice dropped. "She didn't know the mic was on. She didn't mean for you to hear any of that. You understand what I'm saying to you right now?" "I understand." "So what are you going to do?" "I don't know yet." The thing happening in my chest wasn't panic. It was quieter and more disorienting, like a compass that had been spinning for a long time and had suddenly gone completely still. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Yeah." "The night I covered her with the blanket, you texted me right after." I watched his face carefully. "Did you already know before the file?" Marcus was quiet for a moment that stretched long enough to be its own answer. "Episode 39, he said. "You'd forgotten your headphones. She offered to share hers, the splitter she keeps in her bag." I remembered it. Both of us leaning over the same laptop, one earbud, each shoulders touching because there was no other option. She'd laughed at something I said and turned toward me, and her forehead had nearly caught my jaw, and neither of us pulled back. "You sat like that for 11 minutes, Marcus said. "I timed it, because watching you two was like watching someone try to drive a car they didn't realize they were in." He pushed the cold coffee aside. "You were already gone, man. You just hadn't looked down yet." I pressed 2 fingers hard against the bridge of my nose and held them there. "I need to think. Think fast, and think straight." He tapped the table once between us. "For once in your life." My phone buzzed on the table. We both looked at the same time. Jade Moreau. Marcus stared at the screen, then at me. His expression didn't move a single degree. "Don't," he said flatly. I watched the screen until it went dark. Put the phone face down. "Just don't think so long you run out of road," Marcus said. He picked up his cold coffee, grimaced at it, and set it back down without drinking. I called Jade back that afternoon. Marcus would have had opinions about that. Strong ones delivered without raising his voice, which somehow made them worse. But I'd been sitting in that coffee shop for 20 minutes after he left, turning my phone over in my hand, and the version of myself that was scared of what I now knew needed somewhere to put that energy. Calling Jade back was easier than sitting still with it. "Thought you were ghosting me," she said, picking up on the first ring. "Rough morning. What's up?" "I have a piece launching next week. Relationships, lifestyle, your territory. I thought maybe a quick guest segment if you have space Friday." She'd been on 3 times before. Episodes 31, 38, 44. Numbers spiked every time. Marcus liked her because she showed up prepared. Sophia liked her because, well, Sophia was professional about it. I hadn't paid close enough attention to notice what was underneath that. "Friday works," I said. 3 o'clock. "Perfect." A warm pause. "I'll bring the good coffee, not whatever Marcus keeps in that booth." "He can hear you spiritually." She laughed. "Good. He should upgrade." I texted Sophia after Jade's and Friday for a guest segment. 3 p.m. She responded in 40 seconds. "Great. I'll pull her last 2 EPs for context. Professional, clean." I didn't let myself read into it. Friday arrived gray and humid, the kind of October afternoon that couldn't decide between fall and a final argument for summer. Jade showed up at 2:50 with cold brews and an energy that filled the studio doorway before she'd fully stepped through it. "Ethan." She handed me a cup and looked around the space with genuine appreciation. "I always forget how good this room sounds." "Marcus built it right. Smart man." She glanced toward the booth. "Marcus, love the setup." "Thanks for the coffee feedback," Marcus said, not looking up. She grinned, completely unbothered. Sophia came in from the back, 2 minutes later, show notes in hand, reading glasses pushed up on her head. She stopped when she saw Jade, smiled clean and immediate, and crossed the room. "Jade, good to have you back." "Always a pleasure. The avoidant behavior episode circulated in my community for weeks." "That was mostly Ethan," Sophia said. "It was collaborative," I said. "He did the emotional heavy lifting." She glanced at me sideways. "I kept him from going 30 seconds over on every segment." "Ongoing project," Jade said, looking at me with a grin. The session ran an hour. Jade was sharp and prepared and unafraid of a direct question, which made the back and forth easy. Marcus called the wrap at 4:15, which was exactly when the rain started. Not a polite drizzle. A full no-warning Texas downpour that hit the skylights like applause and turned the exterior staircase into something resembling a waterfall feature. "I don't have an umbrella," I said. "Nobody has an umbrella," Marcus said. "Nobody ever has an umbrella in Texas." Marcus stayed put with his equipment. Jade had a meeting across town and stood at the doorway calculating options. Sophia and I stepped out onto the covered top step room for exactly 2 people if neither moved much. "Your fault," Sophia said. "I didn't schedule the weather. You scheduled a 3 p.m. Friday session in October without checking the forecast. That is a significant reach." "Is it?" She turned her head and her shoulder pressed into mine from the motion alone, not deliberate, just the inevitable result of 4 square feet of shared space. She pulled her jacket tighter. I kept both hands in my pockets. We stayed like that for a few minutes, watching the rain sheet off the awning across the street. Her knee was warm against mine. She was close enough that I could hear her breathe. "Good session," she said. "Yeah." Jade came in prepared. "She always does." Sophia looked straight out at the rain. Something passed through her jaw, brief and controlled, gone in under a second. "She likes you," she said, perfectly even, like she was reading weather data off a screen. "She's a guest." "Sure." Her chin lifted slightly. "I'm just saying, she comes in prepared. She brings you coffee. Specifically, she laughs at your setups before the punchline." She turned back toward the street. "I notice things. Occupational habit." Sophia. Behind us, Jade reappeared. She produced an umbrella from her bag with the satisfaction of someone who had absolutely planned this. She held it out toward me, smiling wide and easy. "Walk me to the corner," she said. "And dinner Thursday just to say thanks properly. That okay?" I looked at Sophia. She was already looking at the rain. Her jaw was set. Her hands had curled around her elbows so tight her knuckles had gone pale. "Go," she said, voice perfectly steady. "I'm fine." I stood there 1 second too long. Then I took the umbrella and walked down the steps. Marcus appeared in the doorway behind Sophia. He saw her face, the way she was holding herself together with both hands while she watched us go. He didn't say a word. He just reached over slowly and put a hand on her shoulder, one brief and solid press, and then let go. Sophia didn't move. She just stood there in the sound of the rain, holding herself so carefully it looked like breathing had become a decision she had to make consciously. Thursday came and went in 2 separate versions that neither of us knew about until later. Mine started at 7:15 when Jade texted the restaurant name, a place on West 6th with low lighting and a wine list that took itself seriously. I showed up in the only blazer I owned that didn't have a studio sticker somewhere on the lining. Jade was already seated, looking effortlessly put together in a way that made the blazer feel like a reasonable decision. She smiled when she saw me and flagged the server before I'd fully sat down. "You look like you've been thinking hard about something all week," she said. "Occupational hazard. The podcast?" "Life adjacent to the podcast." I picked up the menu without reading it. "Tell me about the launch. What's the piece about?" She talked, and she was genuinely interesting, clear-eyed about her work, funny in the self-deprecating way that takes actual confidence. The food arrived. I ate. I asked follow-up questions. I was present in every measurable way, except I kept looking at my phone, not checking it, just looking. The way you look at a door when you're expecting someone to walk through it. Sophia texted me every Thursday. Not about anything specific, a link to something she'd read, a question about next week's topic, a one-line observation about something that had annoyed her during the day. It had been happening long enough that I'd stopped noticing it as a thing that happened. I noticed it now. By 8:30, nothing. By 9, still nothing. "You're somewhere else," Jade said. Not accusatory, just accurate. "Sorry, long week." "Is it the show?" Yeah, the show." I set my phone face down on the table. "I'm here. What were you saying about the engagement numbers?" She studied me for a moment, the particular way she had of reading a room that had made her good at what she did. Then she smiled and let it go and kept talking gracious in a way I didn't deserve right then. "I left at 9:40. Earlier than I should have." Jade walked me out and said goodnight without making it complicated, which told me she understood more than I'd said out loud. I sat in my car for 10 minutes and stared at a phone screen that still had nothing on it from Sophia. Her version of Thursday started with cold tea and an empty apartment. She'd made it after work, chamomile, 2 bags, the mug her mother had sent from Portland with a chip in the handle she'd never thrown out. She sat cross-legged on the couch with it and watched it go from steaming to warm to room temperature without drinking any of it. She picked up her phone 3 times, put it down 3 times. Then she called Claire. "I wasn't going to call," she said the second Claire picked up. "I know. That's why you called." Claire's voice was warm and awake. "What happened?" "Nothing happened." Sophia laughed, and it came out broken at the edges, the kind of laugh that has nothing to do with something being funny. That's almost the problem. Nothing happened. He went to dinner with Jade tonight, and absolutely nothing happened to me. I am completely fine." Sophia. "I cried in my car for 12 minutes before I came inside." Her voice cracked clean down the middle. "Over dinner. He went to dinner with someone, and I sat in a parking garage and fell apart like—" She pressed her fist against her mouth hard, breathed through her nose until she could trust her voice again. "What is wrong with me, Claire?" "Nothing is wrong with you." "Something is wrong with me." Her hand was shaking. She could feel it against her mouth, the fine tremor she couldn't stop. "I have been doing this for 3 years. 3 years of being exactly what he needs, being there, being steady, and now some woman shows up with an umbrella and a dinner reservation and my hands won't stop shaking. Come here. I'll come to you." "No." Sophia wiped her face hard with the back of her wrist. Her eyes burned the skin under them tight and raw. "No, I needed to say it out loud. To someone." She exhaled, ragged and long. "I am so tired of being the person who holds it together." "Then stop holding it together. If I stop, I lose everything. Or," Claire said very carefully, "you stop and you find out it was never as fragile as you thought." She paused. "Sophia, I have listened to you describe this man in every single phone call for 3 years. The way he covered you with that blanket. The way he remembered your coffee order after you mentioned it once. The way he always picks up when you call, no matter what time." Her voice went firm and quiet. "You have described someone who is already in love with you. You've just been so busy protecting the friendship that you never used the right word for what you were seeing." Sophia pressed her palm flat against her sternum like she could hold her own chest together from the outside. "Claire, I know." Her sister's voice softened completely. "I know, baby, I know." They stayed on the line another 20 minutes. Sophia didn't say much after that. Neither did Claire. Sometimes that was the only thing that helped someone on the other end of the line, breathing with you, not asking you to be okay yet. She was still sitting on the couch mug cold beside her when her phone buzzed. "Marcus. Call me, now, the file. We have a problem." I called Marcus back from my car, still in the parking garage outside the restaurant. "Talk," I said. "The file." His voice was clipped and tense. "The hot mic file. It's sitting in the auto-publish queue. If nobody pulls it before 6 a.m., it goes live to every subscriber we have." I stopped breathing for a full second. "How?" "Our scheduling system, Buzzsprout, the platform we use to distribute the show. It has an auto-publish function built in. Files get queued automatically when they're named in the standard format: show name, date, episode number." He exhaled hard through his nose. "The hot mic file got exported Wednesday morning under that exact naming format by mistake. I wasn't looking at the metadata. I was looking at the content and I missed it. Marcus. 47,000 people, Ethan. 5 hours and 40 minutes. His voice stayed controlled, but only barely. I can pull it remotely, but the system is throwing an authentication error on my end. I need someone physically at the studio to override it from the main board. I was already out of the parking garage. Call Sophia, I said. Both of us going is faster. Already texting her. Sophia texted me before I could call her. I'm leaving now. Meet you there. The studio was 12 minutes from the restaurant on a Thursday night. I made it in 9. Her car was already in the lot when I pulled in, which meant she'd been closer or she'd driven faster or both. She was at the door when I got to her keys-out jacket pulled over what looked like pajama pants. She'd come straight from her couch. Her eyes were slightly red at the edges in a way she probably thought the low parking lot lighting was hiding. It wasn't. Marcus explained? I asked. Enough. She pushed the door open. How long do we have? 5 hours 30, maybe less. Buzzsprout won't push early, it runs on the scheduled timestamp, not before. She moved to the main board without hitting the overheads, just the console lights, blue and amber, washing across the mixing surface. The override has to happen from here because Marcus's remote access is locked out. Something about a 2-factor authentication reset he ran last week. He picked a great week for that. He really did. Her fingers moved across the board, pulling up the scheduling dashboard on the monitor. Her hands were steady in a way that looked like it was actively costing her. Okay, I can see the queue. The file is here labeled as Episode 51. She leaned closer to the screen. Who named it? System did it automatically. File name matched the format exactly. Of course it did. She clicked through 2 more menus, jaw tight. I need to pull it from the queue and move it to the private archive. Once it's out of the publish path, it won't go anywhere. She paused, her hands going still on the keyboard. Ethan, is there a reason we're treating this particular file like it's a bomb because Marcus sounded specific? My throat tightened. Yeah, there is. The session ran clean. We wrapped and I thought... She stopped. Something shifted across her face. The board. We never checked the board. We never checked the board. Her hands slowed completely. How much of it is on the file? Sophia. How much? Her voice came out smaller than she'd intended. Her jaw locked immediately after, like she was furious at herself for the slip. All of it, I said. From after I left, your call with Claire, everything. She didn't move for a long moment. Her hand stayed on the mouse. Then she clicked through the final menu, dragged the file out of the publish queue, moved it into the private archive, and confirmed the action. The file vanished from the schedule. Done, she said, completely flat. Sophia, we got it in time. She straightened from the console, putting distance between us. That's what matters. That's not all that matters, and you know it. Ethan. She turned to face me, and her eyes were too bright in the console light, the specific brightness of someone holding something back with everything they had. Her chin lifted. Don't. I heard it. I kept my voice low. Wednesday morning with Marcus. Before tonight. Before any of this. Her whole body went still. I heard everything you said to Claire. I held her gaze. And I've been trying to find the right way to tell you since Wednesday morning, and there is no right way, so I'm just saying it now. You heard... Her breath came out completely wrong, her chest rising and falling in a rhythm that had lost its footing. Ethan, I didn't. That wasn't supposed to. There's something else I need to show you, I said. But I need you to hear this first, because what comes next only makes sense after. Her hand moved before she decided to move it small and involuntary, and her fingers closed around the fabric of my sleeve. Not my hand, just the sleeve, a few inches of cotton gripping lightly like she needed something to hold while everything shifted underneath her. I covered her hand with mine. Neither of us let go. My phone buzzed on the console between us. We both looked down at the same time. The screen lit up. Jade Moreau. Sophia's fingers went loose against my sleeve. She stared at the screen for 2 full seconds, then looked away back to the monitor, jaw set hard. The brightness in her eyes curdling into something that hurt to look at directly. You should get that, she said, perfectly steady, like she'd practiced it. I didn't answer Jade's call. I let it ring out, set the phone face down on the console, and looked at Sophia. She was already pulling her jacket off the chair. Her movements were precise and deliberate, jacket on keys, off the hook show notes tucked under her arm in one clean motion. Sophia, It's late. She didn't look at me. We got the file. That's what matters tonight. That is not what I said 30 seconds ago. I know what you said. She looked at me finally, and her eyes were dry now, which was somehow worse than if they hadn't been. I need to not talk about it tonight. Can you give me that just tonight? Every part of me wanted to push. I looked at her face and didn't. Yeah, I said. Tonight. She left. The door clicked shut behind her. I stood in the blue console light for a long time, not moving, listening to the silence of a room that had gotten very good at keeping secrets. The following Tuesday arrived like a test I hadn't studied for. Marcus had sent the episode topic in a group text 3 days earlier, no preamble. When does friendship become something else? Listener submissions already running hot. We're doing it Tuesday. Sophia had replied with a thumbs up. I had stared at my phone for 90 seconds and done the same. We hadn't spoken between Thursday night and Tuesday afternoon. Not unprecedented busy weeks happened, full calendars happened, but this stretch had texture to it. Weight. It pressed differently against the chest. She was already at the table when I arrived, show notes, organized glasses on coffee from the place 2 blocks over that she only went to when she'd been thinking too hard. The cup was already half empty. Hey, she said. Hey. Marcus looked through the booth glass at both of us, then at the ceiling. He pressed the intercom. We're recording in 4 minutes. Everyone please be a professional. Always, Sophia said. The red light came on. Welcome back to Between the Lines. Her voice was perfect, warm, steady, exactly what 47,000 people tuned in for. Today's question comes from a listener in Nashville. She looked at her notes. She writes, I've been best friends with someone for 4 years. Lately something feels different, and I don't know if it's me or us or something I should say out loud. How do you know when friendship has become something more? You know, I said, when the absence feels different. Sophia looked up, across the table, directly at me. Say more, she said, quiet. The audience version of the question and something else entirely underneath it. When someone's not around and it's not just inconvenient, not just a gap in the schedule. I kept my voice even and hated how easy it was to talk about this from behind the structure of the show. It's like something's actually missing, functionally, like you reach for something that's supposed to be there and it isn't. And that's different from missing a friend. Completely different. I held her gaze. Missing a friend is situational. This is structural. It means they've become load-bearing. Sophia's pen stopped moving against her notepad. Her throat moved. When she spoke, her voice had a carefully calibrated quality I recognized as the sound of someone spending enormous effort on a single sentence. So what does the Nashville listener do with that information? She stops pretending it's something smaller than it is, I said. That's the first step. Just call it what it is, even if only to yourself. And if calling it what it is feels like standing on the edge of something you can't come back from, then maybe you were already over the edge. I didn't look away. And you just hadn't looked down yet. Marcus behind the glass had both hands flat on the console. He wasn't touching a single level. The studio door opened. Jade stepped in, carrying 2 coffees, moving quietly, mouthing sorry when she caught we were mid-session. She set 1 cup near my side of the table and moved to the back wall. She still had the door code from episode 44. I had not thought about that until this exact moment. Sophia looked at the cup, then at Jade, then back at her notes. She kept going. Voice steady transitions, clean 3 more listener questions handled with the kind of precision that made our show worth listening to. She was extraordinary at this. She had always been extraordinary at this, and right now it was costing her something I could measure in the rigid line of her shoulders, and the way her hand had curled so tight around her pen that her knuckles had gone completely white. Marcus called the wrap. Sophia had her things packed in under 2 minutes. She glanced once at Jade, a brief professional smile that stopped well short of her eyes. Good to see you. She walked out without looking at me. I stood at the table and counted the steps between me and the hallway. 4. I didn't take a single one. Behind me, Marcus set something on the table. Old spiral notebook cover bent at one corner. 14 months of episode prep notes in my own handwriting. You left this here last week, he said quietly. I looked down at it. Something made me open it. I turned pages without knowing what I was looking for. Then I found it, and my chest stopped working correctly. The handwriting was mine. That was the first thing I confirmed stupidly, like some part of me was hoping it belonged to someone else, and this was all a misunderstanding I could walk away from. It wasn't. The entry was dated 4 months ago, wedged between the episode 43 prep notes and a grocery list I'd never used. The page was half full, the ink slightly smeared on the left margin the way it got when I wrote too fast. Episode 44, Prep. Sophia asked me today, when do you know the difference between caring about someone and needing them? She asked it like it was a question about the show. I answered like it was a question about the show. We moved on. I haven't slept since. My hands were not steady. I could feel the tremor starting in my fingers, moving up through my wrists, the specific physical sensation of something important arriving faster than the body knows how to process. I kept reading. It's not that I don't know the answer. I know the answer. I've said the answer on mic 17 different ways across 2.5 years. The answer is that you know when the absence is structural, when they're load-bearing. She's been load-bearing for a long time. I just kept calling it something smaller. The date at the top of the page was 4 months ago. Weeks before the Tuesday in October. Weeks before the hot mic, before Marcus's text, before any of it. I had written this before I had any reason to. Ethan. I looked up. Marcus was standing at the edge of the table jacket on keys in hand. He'd been about to leave. He wasn't leaving anymore. When did you find this? I asked. My voice came out strange, lower than normal, scraped at the edges. Just now. Same time you did. He pulled out the chair across from me and sat back down without taking his jacket off. How long ago did you write it? 4 months. I turned the notebook toward him so he could see the date. Before the hot mic, before Wednesday. Before any of this was before I had any reason to. Marcus looked at the page for a long moment. His jaw moved. Then he looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen on him before, not quite surprised, but something adjacent to moved, which on Marcus's face was significant. You've been in love with her since before you had words for it, he said. My chest hurt. Genuinely physically hurt, a pressure behind the sternum that had nothing to do with anything medical. Yeah, I said. I think so. And you're sitting here. I'm trying to think. Ethan. His voice dropped. I say this with complete respect for your process. Stop thinking. Marcus. No. He leaned forward, both forearms on the table. You have a notebook entry from 4 months ago that says she's load-bearing. You have a file of her telling her sister she doesn't know how much longer she can do this. You just spent 40 minutes talking to her through a microphone because it was the only way either of you knew how to say true things to each other. He spread his hands. What exactly are you waiting for? I don't want to do this wrong. My voice came out rougher than I intended. She didn't mean for me to hear that file. She's been protecting this for 3 years. If I walk in there and say the wrong thing, I don't get a second try. I don't, Marcus, I can't lose this. I cannot lose her. You're already losing her. He said it quietly, without cruelty, which made it land harder than if he'd shouted it. Every day you sit on this, you lose a little more ground. You watched her walk out of here tonight without saying a word to her. You watched it happen and you counted the steps and you didn't move. He held my gaze steadily. That's not protecting her, that's protecting yourself. The room went very quiet. He was right. He was completely right, and the recognition of it moved through me like something physical, hot and clarifying and impossible to put back. She's going to think I'm saying this because I heard the file, I said. Then show her the notebook. He tapped the page. The date doesn't lie, man. You wrote this 4 months ago, before you had any reason to. Let her read it and let her decide what it means. I looked down at my own handwriting. 4 months old. Sitting in a studio notebook between episode prep notes and a grocery list waiting. I picked up my phone. My thumb was unsteady against the screen. I typed slowly, reading each word before I moved to the next. Can I come over? I have something to show you. It's important and it can't wait. I stared at it for 10 seconds. Then I hit send before I could think myself out of it. Marcus watched me do it. He didn't say anything. The 3 dots appeared immediately, like she'd had her phone in her hand. They pulsed once, twice. Then the doors open. Something in my chest broke open in a way that didn't hurt at all. I stood up, grabbed my jacket and the notebook and looked at Marcus. Go, he said. He was already smiling, small and quiet and completely genuine. Go, man. Her apartment was on the 2nd floor of a converted Victorian off South Congress. 3 blocks from a coffee shop we'd argued about for the better part of a year. I'd been there enough times that I knew which step on the staircase creaked and how hard to push the building door before the latch caught. She answered before I knocked. Reading glasses pushed up on her head, oversized University of Texas hoodie socks with a small hole near the left pinky toe that I only noticed because she was standing in the doorway and the light was behind her. Her laptop was open on the coffee table inside a half-written document on the screen. She'd been trying to work. It wasn't going well. "Hey," she said. "Hey." She stepped aside. The apartment smelled like chamomile tea and the cedar candle she burned when she was stressed. The couch had a blanket half kicked off one end. "Do you want tea?" she asked. "I have Sophia," I said it gently. "Sit down." Something in my tone made her stop. She looked at me, really looked the way she did when she was trying to read a room, and whatever she found there made her lower herself onto the couch without another word. I sat on the coffee table directly across from her. Not the armchair. The coffee table close enough that our knees were a foot apart. I set the notebook down between us. "Open it," I said. "The page with the dog-eared corner." She picked it up slowly, found the page, started reading. I watched her face move through it, eyes left to right once, then again. Her hand tightened around the spine. Then her jaw went loose and her breath left her in one long, unsteady rush. "This is your handwriting," she said. "Yeah. This date." She looked up, eyes sharp and urgent. "Ethan, this is 4 months ago." "I know. That's before the Tuesday session. Before any of this." Her voice was climbing, tightening. Before I had any reason," I said. "Yeah." She looked back at the page. Her hand was shaking now, a fine, visible tremor moving through her fingers that she made no attempt to control. When she spoke again, her voice came out scraped, completely raw. "You wrote that I was load-bearing." "I did. 4 months ago. 4 months ago." "Ethan." His name broke in half on her lips, the second syllable collapsing. She pressed her free hand flat against her sternum and held it there hard like she was trying to keep something inside her chest from coming loose. "Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you—" "Because I didn't have the language for it yet." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, closing the distance between us. "And then Wednesday happened and Marcus played me the file, and I've spent 4 days trying to find the right way to come to you. But there is no right way." I held her gaze. "There's just this." She went completely still. "You heard the file," she said. Her voice had dropped to almost nothing. "Everything," I said. "From the beginning. All of it." "Oh, God." The tears came immediately. Not slowly, not politely, but all at once, running straight down her face with the abandon of someone who had been holding something back for 3 full years and had finally completely run out of room. Her shoulders curved forward and a sound came out of her that cracked me open from the inside. Not a sob, exactly more like something that had been under enormous pressure finding the only exit available. "Hey." I crossed the distance between us in one movement, sat beside her and pulled her in. Come here. She didn't hesitate. Both hands fisted into the back of my jacket and she pressed her face against my shoulder and I wrapped both arms around her and held on one arm across her back, one hand at the base of her neck, and I didn't move. She was shaking her whole body, shaking, crying, the kind that comes up from the chest and doesn't negotiate with dignity. And I pressed my cheek into her hair and felt the warmth of her against me and thought I have been standing next to this for 3 years and calling it something smaller. "I'm sorry," she said, muffled and wrecked against my shoulder. "I don't usually. I'm not." "Don't." I tightened my arms around her. "Don't apologize, don't you dare." She cried until she didn't anymore. I didn't track the time. I held on and let her because she had been so steady for so long, and steadiness cost something real, and the bill had finally come due. When her breathing evened out, when the shaking finally slowed, she loosened her grip on my jacket and pulled back just far enough to look at me. Face blotched, eyes swollen, and red lashes stuck together in the specific way that means someone has been genuinely completely undone. She was the most honest thing I had ever seen in my life. Her hand came up between us and pressed flat against my chest, right over my heart. She could feel exactly what it was doing. She had to know. "The notebook," she said, voice soft and wrecked. "You wrote it 4 months ago." 4 months ago, I said. "Before I had any reason. Before any of this." Her fingers curled slightly against my jacket. Her eyes searched mine with an intensity that made the whole room feel like it had gotten smaller around us. "Ethan," she said. "Say it. Just say it out loud." "Say it," she said again, softer this time, like the words cost her something to repeat. My hand came up between us, and I pressed my palm gently against her cheek. She was warm, and her skin was still damp from crying, and she leaned into my hand slightly, barely a degree, barely anything, but I felt it everywhere. "I've been in love with you," I said, "for longer than I know how to measure, and I kept making it smaller because smaller felt safer, and I am done making it smaller." Her breath hitched. Her fingers pressed harder against my chest. "Is this okay?" I asked. Almost not a sound, just the shape of the question. She answered by closing the remaining distance between us. The kiss was slow, careful in the way that things are careful when they matter too much to rush my thumb moving along her cheekbone, her hand twisting into the front of my jacket, both of us finding the rhythm of something that had been quietly building for 3 years and was only now being allowed to exist at full volume. She made a small sound against my mouth that undid something structural in my chest, and I pulled her closer and felt her smile before I saw it. When we finally pulled apart, she kept her forehead against mine. Her eyes were still red. She was still smiling. She looked like someone who had set down something very heavy and was only just starting to feel the relief in her arms. 3 years, she said. 3 years, I agreed. We are both so bad at this. Professionally embarrassing, I said, given the show. She laughed real and warm and slightly broken at the edges and dropped her forehead to my shoulder. I pressed my mouth to her hair and held her there and thought about a Tuesday night 3 weeks ago when I'd covered her with a blanket and walked out into the October air and not understood a single thing about what I was leaving behind. 1 week later, Marcus was already in the booth when we arrived. He saw us walk through the studio door together, not holding hands. Nothing dramatic, just the specific proximity of 2 people who had quietly rearranged the geography between them, and he reached over and turned his intercom off so we couldn't hear whatever he said to himself. His shoulders shook once. He turned back to his console. Sophia caught it. She pressed her lips together hard to kill the smile. "He knew before we did," she said, setting her bag on the table. "He timed us," I said. "Episode 39, 11 minutes. She looked at me. "He timed us. He had nothing better to do. I'm going to need a moment with that information." She uncapped her pen and pulled her notes toward her. Her hand found mine briefly across the table, one quick warm squeeze. And then she was back to her notes, professional, and focused exactly the way she always was before a session. The red light came on. "Welcome back to Between the Lines," she said. Same warm register. Same easy authority. And underneath it something new, a quality I didn't have a word for yet, like a frequency that had always been there and was only now being broadcast at full strength. "I'm Sophia Lane." "And I'm Ethan Cole," I said. "And we are very glad you're here." We ran the session clean. A listener question about trust. A tangent about the difference between vulnerability and oversharing that became the best 10 minutes we'd recorded in months. Marcus behind the glass didn't touch a single level. He just watched. At the end, Sophia reached over and pulled her mic close for the sign-off. We'd been doing it the same way for 2.5 years. She'd say, "Thanks for listening, partner." I'd say, "We'll see you next Tuesday." Clean, consistent 50 episodes running. She looked at me across the table. "Thanks for listening," she said. And then quiet enough that 47,000 people almost missed it. "Hey, co-host." Something in my chest expanded so fast it almost hurt. "We'll see you next Tuesday," I managed. Marcus cut the recording light. He sat back in his chair, crossed his arms, and looked at us through the glass with the expression of someone who had been waiting an extremely long time for something obvious to happen and was choosing not to say "I told you so" only because he had too much dignity. Then he pointed at me, then at Sophia, then gave one slow, deliberate thumbs up. Sophia covered her face with both hands and laughed until her shoulders shook. My phone buzzed on the table. Jade. Heard the sign-off. Figured. About time. You two are genuinely the worst at your own subject matter. 5 stars would listen again. I showed it to Sophia. She read it twice and laughed again, the real one, the one that fired before she decided it was appropriate. And I thought about a Tuesday night in a garage studio on South Congress and a microphone nobody turned off and 37 seconds of audio that were never supposed to exist. Some mistakes are load-bearing too. You just don't find out which ones until later. Have you ever had someone in your life who was right there the whole time and you almost missed it entirely? Tell me in the comments. And if this story meant something to you, hit subscribe. We'll see you next Tuesday.